Alright everyone, I've got something pretty cool this week. Now we all know that the pattern tool inside of Photoshop has suffered a tremendous amount of ridicule, and it's even gotten some people asking why it's even still in there. Well, after much experimentation, I have had a breakthrough and came up with a really cool technique in using the pattern maker. So what we're going to do is I've got some text here sitting on its own layer. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate, bring up my layers palette here. Go ahead and duplicate that layer. Just drag it down and make a duplicate of it. I'm going to turn off this one because I don't need it at the moment. And with that layer still active, the duplicate actually, we're going to go under Filter and go to Pattern Maker. Now it's going to tell me that my text needs to be rasterized, which is fine because we made a copy of it. So if I need to go ahead and change the text, I can certainly do that. But in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and render out the text, and it will bring up the big Pattern Maker window. Now the text is... Let's actually change the color of the text for the sake of visibility right now. Fill it with that blue color. And again, this is just for the sake of visibility. I'm going to change it back to white when we get back into here. Let's go back into the pattern maker, and there we see the text. Now, in order to begin, you have to draw a selection with the marquee tool inside the pattern maker. So I'm just going to draw not a really centered, selection, just kind of encompassing the text in there, but just kind of making it offset just a tiny bit, just like that. Now, I want to make sure that I'm using the image size of the entire document. So I'm just going to click Use Image Size, and then I'm going to go ahead and click Generate. And you can see what happens. It's going to give me a really cool scattered effect here. And I can certainly hit Generate again and again until I get a formation that looks appealing to me. And I can actually go ahead down here and toggle through these, each one that I've created, if I saw one I liked back in earlier. So let's say I like this one right here. I'll just go ahead and hit OK. And I'm going to go back and go ahead and fill that with white because we filled it with blue for the sake of color. Actually, what I'm going to do is actually fill this with a gradient. So I'm going to lock the transparency of this layer, go get my gradient tool, and I'm actually going to get this one right here because I like the tone of it, just not the color. So I'm going to actually remove the color after I apply it. So with the transparency locked, starting in this top corner, dragging down, there it is, applied the gradient. I'm going to do Shift-Command-U to remove that color. Then I'm going to change the blending mode of this layer to Overlay. And there you can see, look at that cool effect we're getting. And that was simply done using the Pattern Maker. Now I'm not quite done yet. I'm going to create a layer mask on this layer. And on that, I'm going to go back and get a regular gradient, just like that, going from black to transparent. And I'm going to start at the top, holding down the Shift key, just draw a gradient down, and then going down here to the bottom, drawing in from the bottom up, like that. Now I want to invert that. I want the inside area to be masked and the outside area to be visible. So on that layer mask, simply press Command-I, and that will invert it. I will turn on this text that we created originally, and there we have that. So there you can see we've created a really cool effect simply by using that pattern maker. So it does have some really interesting things that it can do. It can also do it to images. Let me minimize this image. Let's bring this photograph in here. Now, this image is on its own layer, so I'm going to bring up my free transform, going to Command-T. I'm going to scale this image in a little bit, just like that. Now I'm going to get my rectangular marquee, and I'm going to draw a selection over that image, right about like that. Now I'm going to hold down my Shift key so I can add to that selection and draw some more. Just some scattered bars along this image, just like that. Now, I'm going to deselect that because I should be working on a duplicate, just like this. Now, on that duplicate layer, let's go back and draw those shapes. Holding down the Shift key, adding to the selected areas we've already done, just some scattered bars, and then I'm going to press Delete. So that will remove those parts that I've selected. Now with that layer active, let's go into the Pattern Maker once again, and draw a selection just over the entire area, not too precise, just right inside there, and then click Generate. And boom, we get that cool effect there. Now, like I said, you can keep hitting Generate to get different versions of that pattern effect. Now, one thing I didn't do here, let me go ahead and hold down my Option key and reset. we want to make sure that we're using the size of the image itself. So click that Use Image button, and in fact we are in this case, but just make sure if you're going into a new image that you click the Use Image Size. Otherwise you're going to get a kind of a tiling effect, and that's not really what we want in this case. So, let's make that selection yet again. Click Generate, and every time you hit Generate, it's saving each version. You can see you can toggle through and do different things here with it. So let's say I like that one. If I go back to number 3, let's say I like that one as well. Well, you can click on this little disk icon here and save it as a pattern. Let's call it Girl 1. Hit OK. Let's toggle to the next one, and let's save that one as a pattern. We'll call that Girl 2. And we'll go back to this one. So let's say we'll go ahead and generate our pattern with this one. Hit OK. There's that effect right there. Well, what if we kind of want to add those other texture or patterns to this one? Well, simply create a new layer and go to the Fill dialog, which is Shift Delete, and go to Pattern here. Scroll down and find that pattern. There's those ones we created. Here's some ones I created earlier. So there's one of the ones that we created just now. Hit OK, and it will fill that layer in with it. Create a new layer. Go to Delete or Shift Backspace. Make sure you're in Pattern and go and select the other one. And hit OK there. And of course you can move these around, do whatever you want with them, and get all kinds of interesting effects. And if I fill my background layer with maybe a color, maybe that same blue color, if I change all the blending modes of each one of these pattern layers, it'll give me a really interesting background effect. Look at that. I can do an invert. If I press Command I can get all kinds of really interesting effects here just by messing around with that pattern filter, or that pattern maker rather. Bring the original image up top, maybe apply a double click on that icon, bring up the drop shadow, or bring up the layer styles and apply a drop shadow. Turn that off. Let's increase the distance so it gives a little bit more depth to it. Just like that, and hit OK. Boom, look at that. Really cool effect, all done using that pattern maker. So you can see it does have some really interesting features if you just kind of mess around and experiment with it. Again, you don't have to take a pattern maker and create a finished pattern with it and be done with it. You can take it further and applying it and really get some interesting design effects. So I encourage you to practice with it yourself and see what kind of really cool effects you can come up with. Alright, so we'll see you next time.